Has it started? In our study of the Kena Upanishad, we have reached a very interesting passage that aligns perfectly with our study also of the synthesis of yoga. In both of these texts, we have come to the theme of an awakening to a cosmic consciousness. We have come to the awakening of a cosmic consciousness in which the boundaries of our individuality have been dissolved. Our own consciousness now is experienced as being infinite, one without boundaries, and the nature of that experience is being discussed both in our study of the synthesis of yoga and in the Kena. And you will find the descriptions in some spaces similar and in others complementary in their difference. In particular, in the text of the Kena, the whole framework is of the Veda that views the life force, the mind, and other psychological powers within us as conscious beings, the gods, Devaha, beings of light, but conscious, universal in their operation, working within us in an individualized function. But in this working, they consider their growth and their achievement as a personal victory. So the mind within us, which is a conscious part of a universal mind function, as it grows, as it overcomes, it says, I have grown, I am so great, I have conquered. The Kena takes us through that whole story, which we have been through already, in which the divine reveals himself in a manner that the mind cannot recognize, and is forced then to realize that there is a power greater of whom this is the victory. The mind then turns to that power and begins to realize its own fulfillment in that. And this is the description taking place in the chapter that we are studying, the transfiguration of the self and the gods. These psychological powers working within us have now realized that their source is in the Brahman, in the oneness and the infinity of the divine consciousness, and it is his victory that is taking place through them. And so increasingly, through series of revelations and flashes of contact, they are taught to become passive to the direct influence of the divine consciousness, that they may become conscious instruments for that. This is the framework used in the vocabulary of the Veda. At the same time, in the synthesis of yoga, Sri Aurobindo is using a more framework. Our mind and our life energies, conscious deities working in the universe, we see them as conscious operations of something which is a universal power or awareness, not a God. And so in ourselves, the mind opens out, its boundaries fade, our life energies open out, their boundaries fading, and so on. We have in particular the sense of a personal effort. And so my mind opens out, my life force opens out, I have become wider. This is the sense we have because we've identified ourselves with these layers. In the text of the synthesis of yoga, you will see by detaching ourselves from the life energies and from the mind, by turning to the origin behind, our consciousness learns to realize a sense of liberation in that. And it experiences the mind, the life, and even the body as special forms of that. But the sense of the journey is still one of a personal effort and of a personal liberation. These are two different approaches. In practice, they lead to the same realization. Eventually, in that consciousness, you realize the mind, life, and even the physical matter of the body as universal powers, special statuses of the same one divine, matching perfectly with the Vedic formulation. Or approaching through the Vedic formulation and experience, as you see the gods within you awaken, you yourself awake with them. Your own consciousness is liberated by their liberation. And so there is a joining of these two different approaches. In practice, they lead to the same overall realization. But depending on the approach one has taken, our immediate practice may be different. As in the context of the Vedic approach, we ask that universal power to awaken in us. And so, in the awakening in your own consciousness leads to the liberation of your personal mind, and so on. This distinction being understood, the rest of the text you will find is really very similar. In what we last read, as our consciousness has turned more and more to the Brahman, living for the divine, knowing only the divine, thinking and moving only for the divine to embrace and enjoy nothing but the Brahman. The question Sri Aurobindo asks is this to lead only to an inner realization into which you withdraw? And then he answers it by saying, as this consciousness grows, we realize, because we dwell on the Brahman, on the universality and the infinity of the divine, because we dwell only on that, we realize that the mind itself, life energies are an infinite flow. Even the physical matter is one infinite continuum. And therefore, we begin to experience that everything which was earlier outside us, our own infinite consciousness. And so the mind is cosmic, one in all the universe. So too are the life and the sense, so too is matter of the body. And when they exist in and for the Brahman only, they will know this. They will not only know this, but will sense, feel, and live in that universal unity. So as the inner consciousness turns in this way to the divine alone, it begins to perceive the divine in all things. automatically in the external experience of life, the inner begins to grow. Because there is no more the sense of an external, all that is out there is felt within the universality of your own inner consciousness. The sense of an outside fades away because your own individuality has lost its limits. All is now within your whole. To whatever thing they turn, sense and mind and life seems now external to them. There also, it is not the mere form of the things that they will know, of, sense, embrace, and enjoy, but always and only the Brahman. External, all things will be internal to us, even the whole world and all that is in it. So we had read these portions. As the wall of individuality breaks, the mind becomes conscious, he says, of a universal mind, one everywhere. What is the relation of this with the individuality? And he explains now on all three levels. The mind becomes conscious of one universal mind everywhere, in which individuals are only knots of the one mentality. So, the individual life will lose its sense of separateness, live only in and as the one life, in which all individuals are simply whirls of the indivisible flood of pranic activity. We dwelt on these two lines last time, and with a quick recapitulation, we move on. For the mind, he uses the term which makes for the individuality. For the life energies, he uses the term whirl, individuality. And we saw how life energy being essentially a flow, it is the repetition of the flow which creates the sense of an individual. Mind being not flow, but ideas and connections of ideas relating to each other like a web, forming a knot of awareness. The individuality of the mind is the particular arrangement of relations, and we can use the analogy or the image of a spider web. In the spider web, you will see all the threads come to one center. Anything that moves out there is registered in the center where the spider waits. Hits an edge of the web, the vibration is felt in the center. And the spider knows it cannot see too well. It senses from the vibration, this is where it is. And it moves in that direction. So in the universality of mind, where all mind awareness is one whole, the particular links that align to us of our individual thought patterns and thought associations, that's what makes for our individual mind in what is otherwise a continuum of universal mind. And then the third, he says, the very body will be no longer conscious of a separate existence, but the real body which the man will feel himself to be physically will be the whole earth and the whole universe and the whole indivisible form of things, wheresoever existent. 3 separate degrees. The first recognition is that the physical envelope that we have had so far is not our real body. The real body which the man will feel himself to be. Meaning we recognize this is a part, a special front, a wave, a focal point, but it's not the real me. What is the real me? You feel yourself in this continuity. Step, he says, physically will be the whole earth. You will find in the physical consciousness, there are degrees in which the body identifies itself. In our own normal individual human experience, I am separate, me, it is a violation of my privacy. But when I give birth to a child, that child is myself now extended into another body. It's not really another body, it's my body which is now separating and moving out from myself. And when somebody touches my child, I feel a violation of my privacy and I reach out to protect myself. This sense of a physical extension gives of what it is like when the consciousness of the body extends to recognize its own completeness. And it stays not just with living forms. As we grow older, often we experience our larger family, community, or society as our own family. You will find people who have struggled all their life to build their own empire of wealth or power. At some point, they will say, I want to give back what I took from society. And the sense subliminally is that from whom I have taken, into which I want to give back. And it takes various forms. When you know your own body will be discarded shortly from health and age, you create an institution with your name perhaps, which will hold the money that you have possessed, which will continue to do the things which you would have wanted to do, which you cannot now. Endowment, or there is the Bill Gates Foundation, or Melinda Gates Foundation. It's as if after the body goes away, my identity will continue permanently, doing the things which I should have done or could have done. And always the work of that is reaching outward to humanity. And so in our first extension beyond the personal limits, it may grow to the family, but when it frees beyond that narrowness, all of humanity. And its practical sense of extension is the physical expanse of the earth. From there, from all of humanity, which is still alive by humanity, it extends to the not so obvious and life force, and then the body of the physical earth itself. All of these represent a special nodus of energy flow in the cosmos, with which I begin to identify myself. Then, beyond this, the real body which the man will feel himself to be physically will be the whole earth. And then from there, what limits you? The universe. And even that is not enough. There is something more. To experience your body as one with the universe is not yet the completeness. The completeness is the continuity of matter across the universe as one body. The experience of the body as the universe will still experience gaps. More here, less there, far there, near here. He says, and the whole indivisible form of things wheresoever existent. Wherever it is, the form of things is indivisible. Now, this was easier to recognize in the domain of mind and of life energy. Mind being awareness, it does not matter. Even in empty space, it is mind awareness. Even inside flower, it is the continuity of mind awareness, almost like an ethereal extension. Similarly, with life energy, when experiences energy flowing, perhaps more intensely in the knot of a living being, less intensely in the knot of a stone, but still you experience the continuum of the energy because it interpenetrates matter. Experiences our own real body as one with the earth and then the whole universe. What are you experiencing? Where you have matter, obviously, yes, I experience this also, mine, myself. But in the gaps which you see in the physical matter, you may still in the beginning experience a lack. As for example, in our own body form, when you, let's say, feel your body or between two hands. This is me. As I move my two arms, a gap. Completeness of this realization is when even that is experienced as a continuity, real substantiality. Less dense or more dense, but it is still indivisible form of things, wheresoever existent, and wherever it is equally far or equally near in the whole. And this is the extent to which the physical body in the cosmic consciousness. And the senses, what happens to them? And the senses also will be converted to this principle of sensation. So that even in what we call the external, the eye will see Brahman only in every sight. The ear will hear Brahman only in every sound. And then he says something quite extraordinary. The inner and outer body will feel Brahman only in every touch. And the touch itself as if internal in the greater body. So this is something which is worth exploring in detail. First of all, our senses. We discussed this on many occasions. Our senses looking out ultimately perceive not out there. When you see the flower and see its color and color being experienced, not out there, but in you. You could have, as it is often done with a three-dimensional projection on your eyes, you could have a virtual reality that you see. You still see it out there, but you experience it in here. And so all sensory experience is actually taking place in your mind. When your mind thus turns to see and know and enjoy only Brahman, then all those things which are coming into the mind in the registration of the mind automatically perceive them as Brahman. So the flower that is being registered in the mind's consciousness is seen as Brahman, but that flower out there is being enjoyed as Brahman in the mind. This is turning, although they grasp things which are out there, the experience of them is exactly the same. This too is in the oneness of Brahman. This too is form of expression of quality of beauty, of power of Brahman. And the ear, Brahman only in every sound. When the senses thus are turned, sense of outside and inside is no more separate. Everything is within. We are felt outside, because outside is nothing but that which is beyond boundary of your separateness. When that boundary is dissolved, all is inside. So the senses turning in this way still may experience a double perception. And that was part of an earlier discussion many chapters ago. We have the physical senses looking out through the physical, biological mechanism, through the physical eye. And then we have the inner senses of the mind. Close your physical eyes, visualize the flower that you just saw. And that also is in the same sense, now disengaged from the physical sight, but operating still in a physical consciousness, but a mind's awareness looking out to physical forms. So there is an outer body with its outer senses, and there is an inner body. In the subtle body, we turn in this awareness, the inner body. And so there's a double layer of awareness. The outer body will feel Brahman only in every touch. The body will feel Brahman only in every touch. And so what does this mean? When you look at the physical flower, the physical part of the senses feel the touch of the Brahman. The inner working of the senses also perceive now more profoundly, and they feel also the Brahman. Now this we have touched upon earlier in a recent discussion, but we may draw back on that example. Sometimes when you're in the garden, and if you are in a slightly interiorized state, partially meditative, or in a daydream with your awareness relaxed and not particularly narrowed or fixed, one looks at the plant and one feels the plant is conscious. One looks at the flower and you feel the flower is looking at you and perhaps smiling at you. And this perception is taking place not in the physical part of the sight, but in this inner part of the sight. And so the two overlap. There is the physical body of the flower, it's moving gently in the wind. And then this inner part, which feels and sees the flower as conscious, feels its joy and its smile, and feels the connection as it turns to you and knows you, and you respond. And this covers the outer body and the inner body. And it's still in the domain of the gross, of the physical, but we will use the word now gross physical and subtle physical for the outer and inner body. So the inner and outer body will feel Brahman only in every touch. And he puts in the sequence inner and outer because between these two, it is the inner which is the most sensitive, most awake. Sri Aurobindo has in his vocabulary used the term true physical to describe this subtle physical. It's there that you begin to see most vividly, most concretely. And then the gross physical outer body follows as if in its wake. So the inner and outer body will feel Brahman only in every touch. And the touch itself as if internal in the greater body. So behind this is the still larger awareness, which is one in the whole universe. And in that greater body, the touch is taking place inside me. So as I reach out to grasp the flower, I have the sense of reaching out to hold my own hand. It's not something other than I. As I reach out to look at the flower from a distance, I have the sense of making a contact with my own other part of the body. And everything in the universe in this way is taking place in myself, physically. So now we have three levels on which this is happening. In the mind, there is a cosmic mind awareness, equally everywhere, inside which are these special knots. And this particular knot, which I'm habitually used to identifying with, is perhaps a special focus. But otherwise, there are many knots, and they're all equally my knots in the cosmic consciousness. Upon this knot, or allied to it, is a whirl of energy, repeating its pattern. And there are other whirls, and these are the individuals, as I see in otherwise what is a cosmic continuity, one indivisible infinite. And then into that, there is the third base of the support of the material form, in which the energy has taken on a densified, gross, and persistent pattern, where the form seems to be stable or changes very slowly. And these three together join to form our sense of individuality. But you are not in it, you are outside it. You are like the ocean feeling the fish swimming inside it. And then a part of you as if identifies with this one particular whale that I somehow have a special affinity to. And I seem to enjoy its movements and enjoyments in the ocean, while I'm aware of the other whales also and their enjoyments. But this is special somehow, more close, more intimately felt. That's the only difference. But your experience is as if outside in. You are inside the whale, but your consciousness is not bound inside it. You are everywhere, enjoying it outside in as much as inside out. And so this is the experience to which the whole awakening of the gods in us leads to. And so Sri Aurobindo now comes back to the theme. The soul, whose gods are thus converted to this supreme law and religion, will realize in the cosmos itself and in all its multiplicity the truth of the One, besides whom there is no other or second. Moreover, becoming one with the formless and infinite, it will exceed the universe itself and see all the worlds not as external, not even as commensurate with itself, but as if within it. So these two sentences describe the culmination and the fulfillment in 2 degrees when these separate levels of the experience merge. What is now the process happening within us? Through these repeated contacts with the divine presence, our mind, our life energies, our senses turn to that, yearn for that, enjoy only that. And the gods are thus turning to this description which has happened, opening out into a universality. So he uses the soul whose gods are thus converted to this supreme law and religion. Now we need to start asking ourselves, where is this coming from? Suddenly he's speaking of a law and a religion. And often, because of the associations we have with these two terms, we'll say, oh yeah, perhaps it was in the context of that period, and Sri Aurobindo was only using a vocabulary common then, or well, it's one of those old ideas we have to discard and move on. No, Sri Aurobindo does not use these terms loosely. When he uses a word, you have to go deeper behind. Remember, he was a master of Greek, master of Latin, and in their ancient forms. And so, with a mind that knows those terms and knows the etymology of all the modern English usage, when he uses a word, it is with a thread that goes back into its seed, into its root. And so we ask ourselves, what is this law? And in the etymology, the law is the sense of layering, of something settling, imposing, and then binding. This is the original sense of the word. Later, it acquires this special character, a set of rules, a set of commands, an authority imposed, compelling, which you're required to obey. It literally comes from the term lay. To lay, put a layer, lay down. Laying in is the law. Okay? So when we look at this term here, the soul whose gods are thus converted to this supreme law. Think of this as that which settles into your being and becomes now the rhythm and the reality and the natural way of being of this consciousness. It's not something imposed. It is a supreme law because beyond this, there is no other. To know the oneness and its infinity is the last. There is no beyond oneness. As long as you're seeing some split, some duality, some division, you can say, there must be something beyond these two in which these two are one or aspects of one. The oneness, it is the supreme law. There is no other. Being is now turned to participating in this which has settled in it. Supreme law to which they are converted. And the conversion is because earlier, these very forces and powers within us were working for themselves. My mind seizes, acts, achieves, overcomes, and enjoys its victories by saying, I am so great, I have achieved so much. And so with the other parts. But now they realize all this power of knowledge, of being able to go and achieve and conquer, is nothing but a power of that. And the very first verse of the Kena began with this. Who? By whom missioned falls the mind shot to its mark. And the mind realizes that my power to be able to arrive at that knowledge implies something which already knew where I had to go. and therefore could guide my mind, and therefore could recognize when I have reached what I have reached. You see, you could ask this question. It's one of the most difficult problems of artificial intelligence. How do you know that you know? I know this. I found the answer. But how do you know that what you have found is what you were looking for? How do you know there is not something else, or this is not something appearing to be? There is innately something behind or within, in the very essence of my mind's knowing, that knows that it is possible to know, and I don't know now, that knows that I'm moving in the right direction and I'm closer to it, which I wish to know. And when it reaches it, it knows that I have reached it, and even knows that I have reached something but not yet the whole of it. I need to go deeper. That innate knowing behind our knowing has an equivalent in all the other powers. Therefore, it asks also, by whom yoked moves the first life breath forward in its paths? Who binds the life energy and guides it? By whom impelled is this word that men speak? What is the origin of the very inspiration which then becomes the word and the form of the expression? What God set eye and ear to their workings? What is the seeing inside our sight and the hearing inside the hearing? And all this awareness in the God's awakening, it is that which is mind of myself. And so the mind turns automatically to its source. In the personal experience, it takes the form of your mind realizing that in the best of my power of thought, I can only know when the insight awakes, when the intuition reveals, and the mind learns that I can do nothing without the support or the flash of that intuition, begins now to turn to seek it, aspiring for it, becomes passive, waiting for it, and so on. The descriptions we have read before. Until the intuitions can not only come in more frequent flashes, but the mind gives itself to be reshaped by the light of the intuition, that the intuition may flow directly as the true power of my mind, of my life, of my senses. And this is the conversion of the gods to this supreme law. But he uses another word, law and religion, a supreme religion. And so again, we have to set aside the more superficial form of the image of what we understand by religion. Religion, as we understand it today, is, to put it crudely, groupthink. That means a group of people are said, okay, we will believe this. And if you don't believe this, you're not part of my religion. If you want to join my religion, believe this. And the groupthink binds and limits. And in the very binding separates from other groupthink against which there is a collision and conflict. Innately, any groupthink, however wide the groupthink may be, innately it is limiting, prevents further growth both of the individual and eventually the group. That is how we understand the word religion. The root of the word religion goes back to religare. Re is redoing, repeating. Ligare, joining, connecting, binding. And so in its most crude understanding, people have said religion is that which binds us together in our groupthink. No, that's not the original sense of it. The original sense of that ligare is similar to the yoga concept, union with the source. Relinking is the sense of religion. Ligare, reconnecting to what? The source. Meaning it was already linked. We lost the link and now we relink. If the concept was a group think of binding together as a group, there would be no need for a re. You see? The re suggests that there was already a link that has been lost. Groupthink would just be ligare. The re-ligare reminds you there was something forgotten. And so the reawakening to that link And the same concept as yoga. And it is in this sense that we recognize the supreme religion. Now, you could again look at this relinking in many ways, to many degrees, when it reaches its highest possibility of seeing only the one, and serving only the one, enjoying only the one, living only for the one. There is nothing more than that. It is the supreme religion. So the soul, whose gods all the psychological powers within, all the functions of our being, are thus converted to awe and religion, will realize in the cosmos itself and in all its multiplicity the truth of the one, besides whom there is no other or second. And if this has happened within me, automatically, and through the very logic of what we have seen so far, that perception is experienced and realized in the whole cosmos, in all its multiplicity. Now, this all its multiplicity is also important to appreciate. The whole cosmos, not just as one big blur, the whole cosmos with all the tiny parts. And how many parts? You look at the sky and the stars, trillions. And against each star, millions. Because each star often is actually a galaxy. So billions perhaps of stars within that spot, against which so many dozens of planets, against which so many billions of grains of sand and billions of atoms and so on. That appreciation of the fine distinctions and the rich multiplicity, that is not lost. It is not one blurring divine. See, the experience you will recall, which is presented in this amusing story, is of a disciple who has just been given a first glimpse of the oneness of Brahman. And he jumps up in excitement and shouts out, I am Brahman, you are Brahman, everyone is Brahman. And for him. And he says, you are Brahman. And the Mahout says, get out of the way, you crazy fellow. No, you don't understand. You are Brahman, I am Brahman, elephant is Brahman. And after a while, the Mahout nudges the elephant picks up this man and throws him aside, and he moves on. Poor fellow is bruised and shocked, comes back to his master and says, what happened? I thought everything was Brahman. And the master says, your Brahman must acknowledge elephant Brahman and listen to Mahout Brahman. Our first mental idea of the sense of oneness is a flattening out into uniformity. Everything will get blurred into one continuity. But the divine himself in his oneness pours out in infinite variations. And within each of those infinities of variation, infinite varieties, unendingly dividing, multiplying. And so when he says, we'll realize in the cosmos itself and in all its multiplicity, it is this aspect which is highlighting. To realize the one, the truth of the one, besides whom there is no other, in the whole cosmos, I see the whole thing as one conscious being of one divine. Wonderful experience, but incomplete. This must go all the way down into all its multiplicity, into the tiniest grain of sand and atom, one, and experience the same relationship as in the all that is the one. So, the truth of the one, capital O. But Sri Aurobindo takes trouble again to add a few more words. The truth of the one besides whom there is no other or second. Why does he bother to highlight that? One could have said just one, capital O, it's finished. Besides whom there is no other. Because it is an aspect of the practical. It's not enough to say, yes, it is all the same one. As long as you have the sense that there is this one and then this is a part of the one or a projection of the one or a separate aspect of the one, you can still end up with a limited experience. And you have this in the In certain traditions, in the Abrahamic traditions, for example, they will speak of, my God is greater than your God. God is a jealous God because he does not want you to follow another God. The essential idea behind that which you are following is not the supreme unless it is the one besides whom there is no other. All others are nothing but itself, at best seen in different aspects or forms or special qualities. The front, but it is the same one, there is no other. And so in the practical experience, you may still end up with a differentiation that the flowerness is somehow less divine than the mountain or the tree. Or the human form is more divine because it is able to express itself more clearly than the stone, which is dull and inert in its expression. And you would have this sense of or less or more. And even that ceases to be. In the one besides whom there is no other or second. So you read the sentence again. The soul, whose gods are thus converted to this supreme law, will realize in the cosmos itself and in all its multiplicity the truth of the one besides whom or second. More, becoming one with the formless and infinite, the universe itself. And we have to dwell upon. It's not enough that you have experienced the whole universe as an extension in the oneness of your body or your mind or life energies. The moment you say universe, you can conceive of something beyond universe. The universe itself may be without boundaries and infinite, but if you can conceive of something beyond universe, then your infinity is not complete. So the moment you say universe with a limit, it is a limit of form, maybe a form of mind, but still it is a limit. The nature of the complete liberation, the dissolution of all boundaries, is that you become one with the formless and infinite. And the universe itself is seen as a special expression, even though infinite in its expression, that from which it comes, in which it exists, is beyond its limitations. The universe itself, and see all the worlds not as external, not even as commensurate with itself, but as if within it. So there are 3 degrees. First, you experience the universe outside you. Consciousness is liberated. You experience yourself one with the universe, but the full completeness of it, all the way into the formless infinite, all the worlds are inside you. Your own consciousness exceeds even the experience of space, the experience of time, the experience of infinity, and the experience of eternity. It exceeds even these. And so this gives us the nature of this experience of the universe from the liberated consciousness. The next paragraph develops this idea to its higher status. So far, you could ask yourself, mind, life, and body, who is the consciousness that is thus liberated, which experiences the mind also infinite, and so on? What is this pure awareness in which the liberation has taken place? And it is this now which he develops. And in fact, in the higher realization, it will not be mind, life, sense, capital M, capital L, capital S. The mind, life, sense, lowercase m, l, s, themselves will be originally aware, but rather that which constitutes them. So we'll reread this, but you get the idea. He's speaking of 2 different mind, life, sense. The capital ones and the lowercase ones. The lowercase ones are that which we experience. My mind cut off from the others. my life energy cut off, and my senses separated. And the capital M is this universal, cosmic mind, life, senses. So in the higher realization, it will not be mind, life, senses, of which even the lowercase mind, life, senses themselves will be originally aware. That which constitutes them. Sense of something constituting mind, life, and senses. And that takes your consciousness a step beyond. What is it like to be beyond mind? To be in a consciousness that knows mind itself as a special awareness, and even a limited awareness, although infinite. It is still a limited, narrow band of experience, as is life. What is that which constitutes all these things? And it is in that the higher realization takes place. And we'll come back to this next time for greater elaboration. By this process of constant visiting and divine touch and influence, the mind of the mind, that is to say, the superconscient knowledge, will take possession of the mental understanding and begin to turn all its vision and thinking into luminous stuff and vibration of light of the supermind. So there is this constant flooding, at first visitations and eventually flooding of things of the higher consciousness, which takes this and transmutes it until it becomes as if substance of that. And it is this which is the nature of the higher transformation or transfiguration of the gods. And this we set now as the first base of our further discussion of this topic, which we will take up on the Sunday after next, which is I think the 4th of February. And for next Sunday I will be out of station. Those who are interested can come and watch a video of some of the other talks on this or other theme. But this brings us now to a deeper dimension of this transfiguration of the gods. So, experiencing the transfiguration within us, there are 3 stages. First, our consciousness awakes and says, oh, all that I thought was me and my achievement and my doing was never mine. It is the divine which was working through me. And so it awakes to something beyond itself and begins to set up a relationship of conscious turning to the higher source and conscious self-giving and conscious passivity to its influence. The second stage is, as a result of this influence now, the limits, boundaries fall away, and there is a liberation of their working into universality, into a cosmic consciousness. But there's still mind, there's still life, although cosmic. And a third stage is when that of which they are a function begins to fill with its light and transmutes it into its nature. And this is what Sri Aurobindo has referred to in integral yoga as the transformation. And a supra-mental transformation. The source of the transformation is in that consciousness which knows the unity of all these things. We can meditate on this briefly.